We're in New York with Carl Reiner. Carl Reiner's longtime friend, Dick Van Dyke, was trying to sum up Carl Reiner once, and I think used the term instant genius.
Oh, my.
How does one deal with a friend referring to you as instant genius?
Well, you smash them about the head and shoulders and say, stop that. I'm not, people will require too much out of me, from me. Yeah, instant genius is all right. In other words, it's not exactly genius. It fluffs up and then disappears. I object to that term, genius. Not only to me, but it's used too often for too many people. There are only a few geniuses sprinkled on the earth every century, and we should save that word for people like Einstein, Freud,
the 2,000-year-old man.
The 2,000-year-old man, yes. There are things that approach genius, but to be called a genius, you really have to have a volume of material, a volume of original material, but a great volume. Shakespeare was a genius because there were 37 of those magnificent plays where he said very brilliant things, and so was Mark Twain a genius because he wrote all of that brilliant work, and Bach because he wrote all of those fugues, and Beethoven, all of those symphonies. So we ought to reserve that, but I like the fact that I got Dick Van Dyke fooled.
It's a beginning, right?
Yes.
When you refer to Shakespeare and his plays, I wonder, is that the influence of, at the time, Major Morris Evans, when you were in the South Pacific with his troupe?
No. As a matter of fact, with Major Morris Evans, I only did comedy. That's when I started doing comedy. Before I got into the Army, I was an actor, a straight actor, and I had done Shakespearean repertory as an 18-year-old touring the southern provinces in Canada, but in the United States, the southern states. And I had my Shakespearean training before I met Maurice Evans, and after I met Maurice Evans, I never did any Shakespeare, except for fun. Started to kid around and making fun of Shakespeare.
I want to ask you something, because there's so many stories about how Carl Reiner really meant to be a baseball player, and it was the influence of your brother who encouraged you to join the drama workshop with the WPA.
Gee, you got me down.
Why? How did was your brother with the WPA workshop?
No, my brother just read a little ad in the paper and said there's an adult education course given by the WPA downtown New York and Center Street. He said, why don't you enroll in that? I was working as a machinist helper, which became the basis, I'm going to belch, of Enter Laughing, and the book I wrote based on my early life. I was a machinist helper, and he said I was getting $8 a week. It didn't look like a great career, and he knew I did have performing ability, although I never acted in plays after the 3rd grade. But I was able to impersonate, I was able to make people laugh a little bit, and I did cut up once in a while at home. But I was amazed that he knew it, because I didn't hang with him. He was 4 years older, he had friends, but he said, why don't you go to a dramatic club, a dramatic workshop? And I did. I just casually went there, but I really was driven. I mean, internally I was driven, but I never knew it. If he hadn't said that, I might not have ever done anything about it.
Carl, who were some of the people in that drama workshop? Were the people who went on, as you did, into the arts?
No, I was the only one that I know of that became an actor from that workshop. I had my first girlfriend from that workshop. Barbara and I were very close for about a year, and she never became an actor. She was very talented. There was a couple other people who were talented, but they never made it. I mean, they never stayed in the business.
With the success of your film, Oh God, and what you got from John Denver and George Burns, I'm not minimizing for a moment that in the middle of somewhere between Oh God and The One and Only, you have also managed to work as an actor and be directed by Burt Reynolds.
Yes, and I read in the New York Times that I may be cut out of that picture.
They don't like your psychiatrist role?
No,
Why?
As a matter of fact, when I saw a rough cut of it, I thought the little self-contained scene was very funny, but you've got to be very cruel when you cut a picture. My theory is, and I'm sure glad that Burt Reynolds subscribes to it because it'll help his picture, stay with the story and the hero. If it doesn't move the story that much forward or doesn't get that big a laugh, cut it down. The scene was a self-contained scene. It didn't help what was happening in the picture at that time. It was pretty well established what was going to happen, what he should be doing, and that scene was just like a stage wait. It was terribly funny. You had a very funny scene of a psychiatrist telling a guy take death therapy and then dies while he's talking to him. I died in the middle of talking to him, and it is a funny idea, but it didn't help the story. I think he's cutting it out. I may end up in the picture yet, but I think he said where the last scene, I may cut that. He has to cut it down for size.
Did you have any dilemmas resembling that one when you were finalizing The One and Only? Anything gone that you were really pleased with but didn't fit?
No, you have to be rather cruel when you cut a picture because, as I say, the two things that are most important to me is tell the story as economically as possible and never bore the audience. Don't let them hang there because you've got something particular that you're in love with and you think it's very funny or very good, but it doesn't advance the story. Somebody once said, my friend Joe Stein, who's a writer, wrote Fiddler on the Roof, he has a thing on his wall of his office, everything is too long. That's his, in other words, when you're writing, be economical.
Gee, I wish you'd have a talk with Bertolucci.
Well, he, sometimes, like Eugene O'Neill, when he wants you to feel the humdrum of life, he wants you to live through it. In drama, it's a little different. He wanted you to live through the long day's journey into night with him, and you feel, and that was worth it. And when you're saying those kind of words, Shakespeare and Eugene O'Neill, they have the right to bore you when they want to, because they are saying so. If you listen quietly, those lines are saying something very important. But for the most part, comedy and things like that should be concise and economical. Of course, I had to be very cruel. In Oh God, I cut out a scene with Donald Pleasance that was brilliant. It was a brilliance. He was so good, and I kept it in the picture until the last preview, and I said, it's not advancing the story. The audience wants to go with us from this scene to the following scene after that, and I cut a 4-minute scene, and I cut out the bulk of the Donald Pleasance role. He had 2 lines in it after that, and I want to meet him someday to apologize, because I think he's one of the world's great actors. And here, with an axe, I cut. And in the One and Only, we cut, it's like a sculpture. You take a big piece of granite and you cut out everything that's not an elephant. If you're sculpting an elephant, you just keep chipping away. And in the One and Only, we had a 2-hour picture. It's now 1 hour and 40. And you chip away everything that is not Henry Winkler as Andy Schmidt in the One and Only. And I think we did a very good job of keeping and selecting what should be in that picture.
Is it important to you when there's a credit on a film, as there is on the One and Only, and it says a Carl Reiner film?
I am not only thrilled with that, I am very grateful, because it was not in my contract with Warner Brothers for Oh God, and it was not in my contract with Paramount for the One and Only, but David Picker and Steve Gordon, the producers, and Barry Diller and Michael Eisner, the heads of the studio, felt that my product, and the Warner Brothers, the same thing happened with the heads of Warner Brothers, Mr. Calley and Mr. Ashley, they decided that I have always given a good product to the country. My early days wasn't my product, but being a part of the show of shows and being the producer and writer of the Van Dyke Show and the films I had done, which were not terribly successful monetarily, but we never cheat the audience. We do give them entertainment. And they researched it and found out that people would come to a Carl Reiner film, and they were the ones who put a Carl Reiner film in front of Oh God, and then Paramount did exactly the same thing. They're friends, you know, Macy's does talk to Gimbels, and they chatted about it, and they decided on their own, Mr. Picker, Mr. Gordon, and the heads of the studio decided to put Carl Reiner's name on the film. It is not in my contract, and it was their idea, and I love them for it. I think it was very decent. Jerry Weintraub, it was his idea on the Oh God. He was the producer of that, and it was his idea to put it on.
You know, maybe because I want to find them, but there are moments in the One and Only, particularly when Andy Schmidt is on stage during the play, that take me back to Enter Laughing.
Take me back, too.
Do they?
Sure.
Is it there on purpose with that little homage to Sid Caesar you've got in the movie with Andy Schmidt's family watching television?
Oh, yes, absolutely. Yeah, it's an interesting thing, but Steve Gordon was a fan of mine as a kid, watching the Van Dyke Show, watching the show of shows, and a lot of influence. I feel a lot of the work I've done has influenced his work. He has done variations on the theme, which are marvelous, which is what creative people do. You cannot create from thin air. You create from something you've seen. You walk like your father, not exactly like him, but a little like him. And he has been, watching what I've done very carefully and done marvelous variations on things. So when he wrote that scene about him being on stage as a kid, I felt he had seen Enter Laughing, but it wasn't quite the same. Sid Caesar was on a television screen in the 1950s, and I asked Sid, I said, we want to epitomize the 50s, and for me, the best thing that ever was on the 50s, and anything, in any form, drama, was Sid Caesar. For me, that was the most important thing in the 50s. Can I use a little clip of you to say that this is the 50s? And Bill Daniels, who plays Henry Winkler's father-in-law, says, hey, that guy's funny. We just see a clip of a little
Tell you what, we'll take a moment and have a look at a scene, okay?
Sure.
Maybe we can find that one.
All right, anything you want.
We're going to have a look at a scene from The One and Only, and we'll be back with more. Looking at another scene from Carl Reiner's film, The One and Only. There's something, The One and Only is a comedy drama. And I find that in between the laughter, there's an awful lot of pain. And it's the pain of being an actor. And I made a reference earlier to the kind of joy with which one can still look at a film like Enter Laughing. And when you work with people who are hot in show business terminology, and you have Henry Winkler, John Denver, and I think, where's Rennie Santoni? What happened to Rennie Santoni, and why didn't the career build in relation to Andy Schmidt and acting?
Who knows? That's one of those imponderables. Why does John Travolta walk on the screen and the whole world falls apart? Why does Henry Winkler walk onto a television and a motion picture screen and everybody says, hey, what are, they applaud and they meet him in the street? That's that imponderable that is very hard to fathom or to guess at. Rennie Santoni is an extremely talented fellow. He was just in I Never Promised You a Rose Garden. He's a creditable, wonderful actor, very creative comedian. And why? Who knows? Why not? It's one of those mysteries. If we knew that, we would always hire the person who becomes a star immediately. But we search and look, and before one bursts on the scene, you go through thousands of people that are just good, wonderful, workmanlike actors, but that little special something that an actor or a performer has that makes them a star, and then that extra special that makes them an invented term, superstar. Nobody knows. Nobody knows. It's something that an audience empathizes, relates to. For some reason, there's something in those people the audience take to their heart, they empathize with it, they identify with it, and it's an imponderable. Wish we knew. If we knew, we'd make more stars. We'd go around and say, oh, there's a star. Go through a multitude of a million people, say, star, star, star. We don't know until they get the opportunity to perform their wares. And then when they get the opportunity like Rennie did, and he was brilliant in the picture, there's no question about his talent, nobody seemed to jump up and down and say, we got to have 100 Rennie Santoni movies. But as far as his talent, I'd put up his talent against any of the superstars. But it has nothing to do with talent.
I agree. I only asked because I admire the man.
Yes, I wish I knew the answer. I hope I answered myself.
I think you did. When you write, and I'm not minimizing writing around the 9 years with Sid Caesar, which you called your writing college, but when you were doing those things like writing Debbie Reynolds' first television special, or the special shows you wrote for Dinah Shore, were you writing around the existing personality? As you did for Caesar and Van Dyke?
No, well, for Caesar, I was a member of a writing staff. I was not even, I was without portfolio. I was an actor who was allowed into the room, because writers are very solicitous of their calling. But Max Liebman, bless his soul, said, hey, Carl, go with this group, because I was always contributing as a talking writer. We were all talkers. There was only one writer, but that one fellow sat at the typewriter, but we were all talking writers. And I was less verbal than most of them when I first started, and then as I learned, I get noisier and noisier. As a matter of fact, in the first year I was pretty noisy because I came up with a couple concepts that did get to be part of the show. The foreign movies, was an idea I had because I can allow myself to not compete with Sid, because Sid always did the best double talk of anybody. But I always did double talk before I met Sid, and I said, how do I get to use my double talk? And I got the idea of, let's do a foreign movie, French movie, Italian movie. And Sid and I demonstrated what we meant when we came up with it. But I'm not answering your question.
Writing around Debbie Reynolds,
writing
Dinah
around
Shore.
Well, Dinah Shore had an established show called The Chevy Show, and it was a matter of writing little sketches to work with the guest performers and little introductions. It wasn't hard writing. It was as a matter of fact, if the truth be known, and I want to be honest, after I came out of the show of shows, they probably paid me much more money to write the Dinah Shore show, but it wasn't the kind of comedy we were doing before. I felt like I knew at that point that I had to change my major. I was a comedy performer in a variety series, review form, and that form died. And now the singers were becoming the hosts of shows, and they were certainly not going to do the high-powered comedy that we did with comedians at the helm. So at that point I was retooling and not being very satisfied at the retooling. And that's when I went into situation comedy right after that. And I started writing for motion pictures after that. I wrote The Thrill of It All after that. But I wasn't happy with that kind of work. I was happy with the people I were working for. Debbie and Dinah were just, to this day, we're still friends. I see Dinah on our show all the time. We see each other socially once in a while. But as far as the work was concerned, it was not exciting work. It
When
was,
but when you wrote The Thrill of It All, and when you have the
That was
kind of
exciting.
formula that Universal knew it had with Doris Day and the premise of her appeal, did you have to write a Doris Day script?
No, as a matter of fact, that script came about by a luncheon with Larry Gelbart in his home in Ghent, New York. And my agent said, "You got an idea for Judy Holliday?" And I had a little idea about somebody becoming a spokeswoman for a soap commercial on television, accidentally, inadvertently, and becoming a star spokeswoman. And I told Larry about it. We put down 4 pages, and I brought it to the Morris office with my agent. And Judy Holliday wasn't feeling well very soon after she passed away, but I read it to her. She said, "Wonderful idea." Then I didn't do anything about it. I went out to California and started working on the Dinah Shore show. Mel and I were at a party doing the 2,000-Year-Old Man for Friends. Ross Hunter was there, came up to me, he said, "You got an idea for a script?" I said, "I do have an idea for a picture." And this was the idea I had. It wasn't for Doris Day at that time. It was just an idea for a picture. And he said, "That would make a good Doris Day picture." And so I wrote it after that.
I like Henry Winkler's performance very much in The One and Only, and I know he's
You were
a good
perceptive.
actor. No, I'm not. I like his performance, though. But were you involved with The One and Only at the point when Dustin Hoffman had agreed to
No.
do it before he changed his mind?
No, I had nothing to do with it. And I knew about it because Steve Gordon was a friend of mine, and I knew he was writing it. And I had read the early script, and I thought it was rather funny. It was a long script, and by long I mean it had many, many more scenes in it than we finally ended with. And Dustin Hoffman, for one reason or another, thought maybe he was a little too old for it. I think that he felt it should be a kid in college starting at 20 or whatever it is. And I think Dustin at the time was over 30. He got it, and he thought, maybe I'm a little too old for this, to be a college kid, because he does grow from college kid to marriage to hero. But it's only a period of 2 years, or less than 2. No, a year and a half. So he goes from college to a year and a half later. And I guess Dustin thought he might have been too old for it. That's what I was told.
Okay. Will you tell us something about you? Because you must be the only man in the world who was ever in the army, who went to a French immersion course to go off and be an interpreter and help America win World War II.
Yes.
And what happened after your French studies?
Well, I went to Georgetown University to the ASTP program, Army Specialized Training Program, and they thought I had enough French interpreter, and I studied French for about 10 months, a very concentrated course of 7 or 8 hours a day learning area, language, economics, all in French, spoken all in French. Understood very little the first couple of months, and then started really to learn a little, understand a little more. And we passed our tests, and we were given a nice banquet by the State Department, and we were all going to be French interpreters working for the School of working for Foreign Service. And then we were graduated and sent to Hawaii, where very few people spoke French. And all the Japanese students at the university were sent to the Fourth Army in France. Somebody must have made a mistake. I think they got the two things mixed up.
Memos in the wrong
But it
boxes.
worked out fine, because as I remember, we won the war. Is that right? And we had a big thing in the paper, I think. I remember victory, yeah, Eisenhower. Yeah, we won. So obviously they did it right. Sometimes you blunder correctly.
But Carl, how's your French? Are you ready to work in Quebec?
Pas mal. Oui, si Québec me veut, je ne sais si Québec, il y a une raison pour Québec de m'appeler.
Comme c'est curieux.
Curieux. Québec est trop intelligent d'avoir un homme comme moi à travailler pour elle. Ça sent, non, je pense. Et ce pontifié, les consommateurs sont libres, les résolutions, sont plus pires.
Merci et tout
Oui,
à
oui.
l'heure. À bientôt.
Tout à l'heure, à bientôt. Je vous verrai encore, peut-être jeudi,
Oui,
pour dîner.
peut-être. Bonsoir. Carl Reiner,
Le-
New York.